This week, we're going to be talking about the CSS box model and positioning. And we will be going over one of the responsive formats that you can use with CSS called Flexbox. There are two other ones that are pretty popular, but we are not going to be working with those until lesson 11 because they are a little bit more complicated. So this week, you are going to want to read through the pages in the book that are specified, and these deal specifically with the box model and positioning items on your page. And then you're going to want to go through the lecture demo. And so you might be wondering, what are CSS boxes? What is the box model? And so we start out by telling you, and basically all of your content on your page, you can kind of envision as a box. And so this content would be a virtual box. And so you might have several sections or, several divisions or several articles. Each one is a box. And that's kind of what you need to kind of envision. And this box is going to have content, and then it can have padding, which is space between the content and the edge. It can have a border. We talked about those last week. And it can have margins. And so when you take the content and you add in the padding and the border and the margin, you can get the width and the height of this virtual box. Okay, and so here is a link to an interactive page where you can kind of play a little bit with a virtual box. And you can see there's a background color. There is a width of the box. It has a border, has padding, and it has a margin. So the margin is the area outside the box. And where you can really see that is from that green edge to the side of this little window. That would be the margin. The padding is the area between the content and basically the border. Okay, so we said here the padding is 50 pixels. So between the letters and the border, that is 50 pixels. Okay, and if you don't specify left or right, and you just say padding and margin, it's applied all the way around. Now the border itself is 15 pixels. So how do we determine the width that this encompasses? We take the width of 300. We add in the border on the left and the right. So that's 30 pixels. So we're at 330. We take the padding on the left and the right, which is 100. So now we're at 430. And then we take the margin on the left and the right, which is 40. So that gives us 470. So that is how big this box is. But let's change it. So let's change the border to 5 and the padding to 10. So now we've made our box quite a bit smaller. So instead of 470, it's going to be, let's see, 310, 30, and 40, 370. So it's about 100 pixels less in width. Okay, so what if we increase this and we increase this? Well, now we're making it bigger. Okay, so you guys can go ahead and play with this so you can kind of get a feel for what these different things do. And just keep in mind that all of them added together is the width. And as far as the height goes, it's going to be kind of similar. This does not have a specified height. Okay, so if you wanted to figure out the height, you would actually have to specify it. Okay. Now, how are these boxes aligned? How do they line up to each other? Well, there is default alignment depending on the HTML element. Some elements have block display, which means they are stacked on top of each other. And some elements, like the ones that are listed here, have inline display, which means that they are part of the paragraph and they're basically displayed side by side. Now, the thing about display in HTML is you can control it and change it, just like you can control and you can change anything. So this is showing you the different display properties. And then here is a little editor where you can kind of play with it. So this is an unordered list that is kind of formatted as a menu. And normally a bulleted list like this would list vertically. So if we comment this out, and run this, this is how it would normally look. Okay, but you can see by changing the display to inline, we now have them side by side. Okay, and the way that it's normally displayed is called block. So, I mean, I could put block in here. Okay, and then you'll say, hey, it doesn't have bullets. Well, that's because I changed the display to block. If I commented it out, it would display vertically with bullets because I wouldn't be changing really the display at all. Okay, but you can see there's a couple different display types for you to practice. Then we get into the concept of parent blocks or containers. So when you have elements in a page, and you have like an outer element, and then you have other ones that are nested inside, the element that is on the outside is called a container or a parent. Okay, and here I've got a couple IDs. One of them I'm calling container and the other one I'm calling box, just so you can kind of see how that works. And this is the box example that you were just looking at on a separate page. And you can see that for the section that is on the outside, I have container. And then you can see there's a section inside that. And I have given it an ID of box. Okay, whatever's on the outside is a container. Body is a container for everything. So the concept of a parent or a container is kind of important. And it is used everywhere. So the UL is like a parent or a container for all of the lines. Body is a container for everything that's inside body. If I did something like this, let's see, I did. I mean, it's not really going to change how this displays, but it does change the structure of the page, because body is a container, but now I have article, and article is also a container. And doing indentation actually is super helpful, just because it helps you kind of visualize these parent and child relationships. So I like indentation in a page, and I always indent my elements just because it makes it really easy to see. So we've got article, and that is a container or a parent for section. and for the unordered list. And we've got the section here that is a container for the paragraph. Okay, so that's kind of what the concept that you guys need to start thinking about is the fact that you have elements. And if you have elements that are inside other elements, then you have like a parent child or a container content kind of relationship. Then we get into the different box models. We have a traditional box, and then we have a flex box. And so you will learn how to work with both. And Flexbox is a very specific responsive format. It has a lot of commands that go with it. So as you kind of go through this, for the traditional box, you will be learning about position properties, how to position things. And then when we get into absolute positioning is kind of static, where you put something on a page and it stays there. Relative positioning is placing content and it's relative to its location on the page. But you will see how all of that works because it's all explained, lots of examples. And then we get into the Flexbox model. And with the Flexbox model, there are a lot of little commands that you will be working with. I really encourage you guys to do the interactive exercises because it is how you learn. I did try to include lots and lots of graphics to help you with this. And if you come back into Moodle, you'll notice there's a lot of additional resources for Flexbox. And Flexbox Froggy is kind of a fun little game that helps you learn the different Flexbox commands. So I really encourage you guys to go through that too, because it will help you learn and games are fun. So once you get done reading through all of this, you guys are going to be ready to work on your assignment. And so the textbook assignment is basically going to focus on the traditional box and how you position things. It also is going to give you practice using Flexbox. So you'll create your folder like you always do. You'll create a media and a CSS folder. And then I'm basically giving you HTML files and lots of graphics. And I'm also giving you some CSS because our focus here is going to be on working with the box model. So I'm giving you a lot of the HTML and CSS to start with, just so you can kind of hone in and learn what the lesson is about. So we start with the traditional box model. And the directions pretty much walk you through what you need to change. There's a video that will also walk you through this. And we do run into a problem and there is a fix for it. So just make sure you keep working through this because by the end, it'll look how it's supposed to. And then we are going to work with Flexbox. So you'll get a little practice with that. And so it's the same basic farm file that you're going to be saving under different formats. So you can kind of compare how these different techniques work. Okay, and you'll see what you need to change in the CSS to create the Flexbox from the traditional. Then we get into absolute positioning, so you'll see how that works as well. And then we get into our song snippet file where you are going to be using Flexbox, but you're going to learn about CSS Combinators. And that is this right here. There are a couple different combinators, but that is one that is quite popular. This is also considered a combinator. So I do want you guys to be familiar with those because you may see it on your certification exam. Okay, so this is another little Flexbox example just to give you more practice. And then this is a summary of what you need to turn in. Then on your own for the lab assignment, you will be creating a traditional box page and you will also be doing a Flexbox page. And so what I would suggest is you can have the same exact content for both, just kind of like we did with the farm file. And then it's just basically adjusting the CSS for each of the models. So for the traditional box, there is an example in the book listing for two you can use as a model. You should put your own content in the page. You can also use kind of this as a skeleton for your page. Of course, you guys have to have your own content. Here is an example. This is actually something that I used. I've used it before. So this is a traditional box. And if we view the page source, you can see the CSS here. And you can see that I've got float none. So anytime you're noticing if it's got a float left in there, which it does, this is traditional box, okay? Then I take this same content and I create a flex box with it. Okay, so you have to do a traditional box, you have to do a flex box. It is perfectly okay to have the same content, but you are going to have to change the CSS. Okay, and if I show you, so this is a traditional box. I have lots of things open. Okay, here. So this is, if I change the size, you can kind of see these traditional boxes do not change in size. Okay, so no matter how big this window is, those boxes kind of stay at the same size. And when you look at the Flexbox example, immediately you're going to notice it looks a little bit different. And you'll also notice that if you change the size of these boxes is flexible. That's why it's called Flexbox. But you can immediately notice a difference because Flexbox is a responsive format. Okay, so same content. It's just that I did it two different ways. And you can do the same thing. So then it basically becomes a CSS change. And this kind of goes through and explains the changes that were made to make it a Flexbox. Okay, and then you're going to have to update your assignment page with links to the files from the textbook assignment and also your two boxes that you created for the lab assignment. Okay, if you run into problems or if you have questions, please let me know. Try to pick content for your page that's fun, that you like to work with, because you can use it for both part 1 and part 2. And it does not matter to me what you do your page on. Okay, totally up to you. If you are kind of struggling with laying out the page, I did include a little link to design theory here. This is optional, but it does talk about some basic design principles like how to balance a page, you know, and how to make it symmetrical or asymmetrical. Okay, so thinking about alignment, proximity and unity. So there's just lots and lots of examples here kind of a before and an after on some of these. And you can see here's the before, the after looks much better. You know, how to use contrast. So just different design things that you can look at. And again, if you guys have any questions at all, you run into problems, please let me know. I also want to point out that there is an extra credit opportunity this week. Occasionally we have something called CIT Industry Night Out, and we have one of those this Thursday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at TCAPS. So because of COVID, you can either go to the TCAPS data center or you can attend virtually. This is totally optional for you guys. It is extra credit if you want to attend. There's more information on the flyer, and I've linked the flyer in here. For those of you that want the extra credit and you do attend, then what you need to do is come down to the Dropbox and write up a little paragraph telling me what you learned at the event. And you submit it and you can get 10 points extra credit. I will be at the event. Hopefully I will see you guys there. And have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions.